Guys, it's Lisa back with another video for you for Lisa Wise Designs, and I'm so excited today. We're going to start making our wallet. Now, this is part of my travel series, so if you want to pick up the kit that has all the supplies, there is a link in the description box below that'll take you over to my Etsy shop, and there are two themes. There's one that's a generic travel theme, and there's one that's a magical theme. So if you want to see a full flip through, just go back one video where I announced this project. So today we're going to get started, like I said, on the wallet. So whether you're making either kit or if you want to pick up the tutorial only and use your own supplies, this is how you'll put that wallet together. So go ahead and pull out your cutting guide. I just wanted to point out a couple of things to you. Out of 7 sheets of 8.5 by 11 cardstock, you can get all your pieces A through H cut. And let's do a couple of those together so you'll know what I mean. I gave you a little cheat sheet right here that says out of sheet 1 which pieces to cut, and that way you'll get everything out of 7 sheets. But no worries, you got at least 1 extra sheet in your kit just in case disaster strikes, right? It happens to all of us. So let's do a quick walkthrough of the project without the pictures in it so you can see the mechanics, and then we'll get started with the cutting. So as you can see, it's got a magnet closure. I love that little sound that you can open up like so, and then I'll pull it down here to the top. It's got a lot of flaps here for pictures, and then another set of flaps, and then one that comes down, 2 that go up, and then you've got a pocket here. It might be a little difficult to see. So to close this up, what you'll want to do is you'll have things in the pocket. So you want to close the top 2 flaps, and then you'll close this one bottom one that seals everything up there, and then you'll do the sides. You'll do your 2 C smaller flaps and then your big B flaps, and then at the bottom you've got another flap that's part of the bottom section, so this will stay like so. But I'll go ahead and open that up where you can see it. This is going to be a belly band where we'll have things in it, and then another really small pocket here, really shallow pocket, and then it all folds up, makes that little noise, and then you've got a 1/2 inch gusset here to hold all of your pictures and all the matting that we're going to be doing. And then here's the back of it. You can see before we get, so it's got all those different, oh, excuse me. Well, you can see all of the seams here, the top and the bottom. Okay, so this is where we're going with this today, but I'm going to be doing it in the black since this is what I've got cut. But I'm going to show you how to cut the first couple so that you'll understand the way my mind works here. So piece A is just 8.5 by 11, so there's no cutting involved if that is the size cardstock that you're using. So sheet A, or the first sheet of cardstock, is piece A. So then we want to cut piece B and C. So it says on your second sheet of paper, if you're using 8.5 by 11, cut 1 B and 1 C piece. So let me grab cardstock. The way I'm starting on all of these cuts is the long part, the 11 inch, is going this direction in my trimmer. All right. So it says on piece B, 5 3/4. So the first number is what you're going to cut first. So don't start with the bigger number. Do exactly what the cutting guide says. The first number cut first. So cut by 5 3/4. So I'm going to cut 5 3/4 like so. And the next one, C, says 5 1/4. Well, this should be 5 1/4 left over after that cut. Does that make sense? Because I have laid it out for you here which pieces you need to cut out of each number sheet, you should get everything out of it. I hope that makes sense. So all I'm saying is you got 7 sheets of paper. Out of 1 sheet of paper, cut piece A. Out of the second sheet of paper, cut a B and a C piece. The third sheet of paper, cut another B and a C piece. So now here is our B that's cut 5 3/4. I'm going to turn it around and cut it 7 1/2. All right. Then I'm going to go ahead and label it. This is my B piece, right? And I'm going to keep my scraps. And the C, I already cut it 5 1/4, so now it needs to be 5 3/4. And this is going to be my C piece. Now, if you're wondering how I know which orientation all these pieces are, everything is longer on the side than it is tall, except for A and C. So what I mean by that is this is 7 1/2 by 5 3/4, so the 7 1/2 is going lengthways, not tall. That makes sense. The only exception is the big piece A, which you're not doing anything with right now, and your piece C. So it should be 5 1/4 wide and tall 5 3/4. So C is the only one that the sides are shorter than it is tall in your orientation. But it's all going to make more sense when we start doing our scoring. So let's start that now. I'm just going to do B and C with you so that it makes sense. If you have not done one of my projects before, it tells you on piece B, score on the 7 1/2 inch side. So I'm going to put this in my scoreboard where I see 7 1/2 inch. So that makes sense. I'm not going to turn it this way. I'm going to turn it where it goes to 7 1/2. So score on the 7 1/2 inch side at 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to hold this in the corner, go over to my 1/2 inch mark, and just make one score line just like that. Just like that. And that's simply all you have to do with piece B. Piece C, it says score on the 5 1/4. So I make sure that this matches up with 5 1/4. All right, and then it says score on the 5 1/4 side at 1/2 inch. So just like so. All right, and then there's my piece C. So go ahead and go through your cutting guide, cut A through H, and do all your scoring, and then come back right here, and then we're going to start putting everything together. I'll do the taping with you and everything. Okay, I'll wait. Anyway, let's flip on over to the top of page 2 where it says piece A. So let me grab my pieces here. Here's piece A. So piece A, you want to orient it where it's got the longer piece at the top. So you've got 6 inches at the top here. You've got that 1/2 inch gusset, and then you've got 4 1/2 at the bottom. So that's the way you orient this, is the bigger pieces at the top, and just write A here. And if you're using black cardstock, what I like to use is a silver Uniball pen. This is a Uniball Gel Impact 1.0 is what I like to use. White doesn't show up very well, but silver looks white, and it looks the best to me. Just make sure if you are labeling these, you don't get close to the edge, because the first 1/8 to 1/4 inch is not covered up by matting. I've made that mistake before. Just stay away from your score lines and kind of do it in the center, and you should be fine. Okay, so at the top of page 2, you're going to grab whatever type of corner rounder you're going to use. I'm going to be using this We Are Memory Keepers Crocodile Corner Chomper, and I'm going to use the 1/2 inch side. So whatever you decide to use, just use that same thing throughout the project. So at the bottom of this one, on the short side, we're going to go ahead and corner round those, just like this. Okay, so the bottom now has corner rounded edges. So now let's work with our 2 B pieces. Put this out of the way. So here, I've labeled mine B1 and B2, just so that it's easier for you to kind of understand what I'm doing. You don't have to do that. You can put your B pieces. So flip these over to the back. Mine says back of B1, back of B2. And we're going to put tape between the cut edge and the score line on both pieces. Now, the reason I'm flipping them over to the back, it's not totally necessary, but I think the way that you score and fold makes a difference. There's lots of people out there who think differently or think it folds, it doesn't make any difference. So this is not detrimental to your project if you don't do it the way I do it. It's just personal preference for me. Excuse me, let me grab some water. It's pretty early in the morning. I haven't done a lot of talking yet. So I'm just going to take a bone folder and burnish that down pretty well. And by the way, when I say the back of it, it's the one with the bump, the bumpy edge. So this is the way you're scoring it. You're pushing down, and the back of it has a bump. That's what I'm calling the back of piece 1 and piece 2 of B. So I'm going to grab my, excuse me, corner rounder again, and the opposite corners of where your tape is what you're going to corner round. So just do that on those 4 corners. 2 on B2 and 2 on your B1, just like so. All right, easy so far? I hope so. I hope I'm making sense. Like I say, it's a little early for me. So I'm gonna grab my A piece. I'm gonna flip it over to the back. So I'm now on the back of A. This has got the little bumps on it. And I'm going to go ahead and fold on those score lines. If you have problems folding on your score lines for any reason during this project, use your ruler to put it right there on the score line and then help you fold that so you don't create new pieces. But I'm folding toward where it says back of A. So now you should really be able to see those 2 score marks, all right? Okay, just like so, on the back of A, I am now in the middle of page 2, right here. So take piece B1, move this out of the way, and you're going to fold on your score line toward where it says back of B1. So fold where you can't see the tape, just like so. Now I'm opening that back up. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be placing this on the top of this piece A, right in the center between the cut edge and the first score line. So you're going to have about 1/8 of an inch on the top and the bottom, just like so. You see, here's the score line. It's a little difficult to see, but there's a little bit of room here, and there's a little bit of room at the top. And that's where we're going to place B1, right? And like I said, there's also pictures on the middle of page 2. So just, if you need to flip your project around to make it easier to see, be sure and do that, which I think I'm going to do, and then I'll show you the end. But I want to have a little bit of room at the top and a little bit of room at the bottom. And I'm going to kiss it right up to the score line on piece B1, not going over the score line, and just try to get it as straight as possible. It's not going to be perfect. And then this is what it should look like. So you've got a little bit of room before the first score line and a little bit of room at the top, like so. And you still got room to fold since you stayed away from the score line. I'm going to fold this and I'm going to burnish it really well. Just like that. Just make sure you're still able to fold everything. Awesome. We're going to do the same thing with B2 on the other side. So you're going to fold toward the back here where you don't see the tape. Open it back up, and then it's going to go on this side. I'm going to flip it around and make it easier on myself. Just trying to make sure there's no tape overhang because I saw there was a little bit there. I don't want to get dust on my project. I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to try and even this up between the top cut edge and the first score line. There we go. Push that down. Make sure I'm able to fold. Finish that really well. So this is what I've got so far. I've got these 2 big flaps here, just like this. And I've got a little bit of room at the top with nothing on it and a little bit of room before the first score line. All right. Like I said, this project's going to be easy. It's just quite a few steps to get it put together, but you will have step-by-step instructions by me on this video. Sorry, I'm clicking on my computer. And you'll also have them here written out for you. So now we're going to work on piece C, which is the top of page 3. All right, so piece C, so I got a C1 and a C2. So on this one, we're going to put the tape on the front side and fold the tape under. So C1 and C2, we're going to put tape on the top between the cut edge and the score line. I always try to get my tape more toward the cut edge than the score line because it's not going to be exactly straight because I tend to, to work pretty fast. But you don't want it to be on that score line because then you're going to have a hard time folding. All right, so now you're going to fold toward the back where you don't see the tape, or you see the tape on the back. So fold toward the back. All right, so the tape is on the flat back here. All right, so I'm going to grab back the piece we're working on here. I'm going to open up the flaps. All right, so piece C1 is going to go on the left side here. But see, this says back of B2, it's just upside down. This is where I'm going to put C1 like so. Right now I'm just putting it on, dry fitting it. You're going to see how it's the same height as B2. So it'll be easy for you to line up. So you're going to put it on the very edge of A. So here's your A piece. You're going to put it on the edge, lining it up, top and bottom with B2, just like so. So I will go ahead and put that down and I'll hold it up in the camera where you can see it. There's also some pictures on page 3. So I like to start in one corner, get that one down, and then kind of pivot it into place. Burnish it really well. So you see it is kind of lined up with B2 here. And when you open it up, you can see the seam there. So just be sure you're able to fold C first and then B2 on top of it. So you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to take C2 with the tape where you can see it on the back. Take that liner off. And put it on the right hand side. And I'm just going to flip mine around. It's just easier for me to work. I'm going to line it up with the back of B1, but I'm putting it on top of piece A, on the very edge of piece A, but lining it up top and bottom with B1, so that when you fold these together, pretty much one is inside the other. It's not going to be perfect, but we don't do perfect, right? Like May always says. Okay, there we go. And see, mine is not perfect either. Oh, and I forgot to round the corner. So let's go ahead and do that on C. That's what I get for not following my own instructions. There we go. Awesome. So now let's work on pieces D. So we have 4 of these. I've already taped up a couple of those. So we're taping them on the front of D between the score line and the cut edge, because we're going to be folding these toward the back. And that's the reason why I do this, some on the back, some on the bottom. If you've been around with me a while, you've probably kind of figured that out. Like if I'm going to be folding toward the back, then the tape goes on the front, and vice versa. And burnish the tape down really well. Okay, and so now, starting on the front, we're going to fold toward the back, where you can see the tape on the back. Do that on all 4. Okay. Bring my project back. Oh, no, I'm going to do it right this time. So on all of these pieces, you're always corner rounding the corners that are opposite of the tape. So there's no reason to do the ones that are taped up. I'm just doing the ones on the opposite ends. Okay. And the fourth one. Bringing back our project back over. So now our D pieces, we're going to open everything up again. All right. And so let's see, we should be on page 4. We're going to start with D1 on the left side, and D, it's folded toward the back. We'll take off the liner. What we're going to do is we're going to put D at the top of this flap, C1, this little small flap, where the seam is. Let's hold this up. So where this seam is here, at the top of that seam is where D is going to go. So I'm going to be a little bit over from the score line. I'm not going to be right on the score line. We'll go over about 1/8 of an inch, but the top of it's going to be the top of that seam. So I'm not going to the top of the project. I'm just going to the top of the seam. And you should be able to see a picture of this in the middle of page 4. So I'm going to flip this around once again just so I can see it well. I'm going to go to the top of that seam, but about 1/8 of an inch over from the side. And then I'm just going to try and eyeball at the top straight. That's dangerous, right? Trying to eyeball something straight. I'll show you that here. So see how it's about 1/8 of an inch from the top. It's at the top of the seam of the one before it. I think you can kind of see that. So this overlaps each other. Makes a little box like this. Okay. So the moral of this is just stay away from this top edge because we're going to be putting a flap on it to close it. So we don't want anything else at the top there. Now we're going to move on to D2. Push up your flap, D1. This one is going to go almost in the same spot. We're going to go about 1/8 of an inch from the score line on the back of C2. And you might not be able to go all the way up to the seam on C2 because it might clash or hit the first D flap. So just kind of dry fit it first. Go to the top of that seam and see if it's going to go over your score line on this flap, which mine is. So I'm just going to come down a little bit from the flap and a little over, almost 1/8 of an inch from the side, the score line, and about less than 1/8 of an inch, about 1/16 of an inch from this score line here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. The only thing is to stay away from the score lines. Don't put it over the score line. Just give yourself a little bit of room because you want to be able to fold it. Okay. So let's see. Mine needs to be about right here. And give me just a second and I'll bring it up to the camera to show it to you. So as you can see, it's about 1/8 of an inch from the side. It's not exactly on top of that C2 because I wanted to stay away from this score line. Just like this, so that you've got your 2 flaps at the top, so that this one is now over to close over it, is why you want to stay away from the score line here. All right. Okay. Now, folding those flaps. So all the flaps are open. Now we're going to go on to D3. D3 is going to go down here on this first score line. See, here's your gusset, your 1/2 of an inch gusset. This first score line here that still says the back of A, this first score line, we're going to put one in this direction on this first score line. And then we're going to be putting one on this side, on this score line. There'll be nothing on your gusset, okay? So let's get our ruler. And we're gonna mark, well, let me tell you where we are here. We're on page 5. We're right here. We're gonna mark about 1 1/8 of an inch from the sides. So I'm just gonna put my ruler down here. If I come over 1, and then that, if you're using a Tim Holtz, that first little dotted line is 1 1/8. So here's your 1, and that first little dotted line, you can't see that. My ruler's so dirty. The first little dotted line past the 1 is 1 1/8. I just made a mark, and now I'm going to put this down, just dry fit it. So if you were to look at it, you'd be 1 1/8 from each side. And it doesn't have to be exact. You can eyeball it, but I know there's some of you who are like me that really like to be exact. So I just put a line here on one side of the score line, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put it 1 1/8 right here on the other side of the second score line. So see, I've got 1 on one score line, 1 on the other. So the first one is D3. I'm going to take off the liner. I'm going to line it up with that pencil mark, but I'm going to stay about 1/16 of an inch, you know, just a hair away from the score line, because you want to be able to fold all of these one on top of the other. So I'm not right on the score line of A. So you can see there's a little bit of room between the score line and where I put down D3. So grab your 4th piece D. You're going to do the same thing on this pencil mark on the second score line. Stay a little bit away from the score line, like so. Don't think mine is straight, but it is not the end of the world. There we go. I'm off just a little bit, but that's okay. At least I'm not on the score line, so there's nothing here in the gusset. So I've got a flap on the top and a flap on the bottom, just like so. Are we good so far? Everybody take a breath. We're almost there. You're doing so well. Everybody's keeping up. All right, so now we're going to start at the top of page 6. We're going to start on the piece E, and this is going to be a belly band. All right, so I'm just going to move all this out of the way. So on piece E, I'm going to put tape once again between the cut edge and the score line on both pieces. You should have score lines at the top and the bottom of piece E. Woo, look at that tape. That's a good job, ain't it? It is some kind of crooked, but at least it is not on the score line. It's closer to that cut edge, so I'm good. All right, so go back and grab your project. Open everything up again. So this D4 flap, I'm going to open it up toward the top because I'm going to be working here on this bottom piece. All right, so you're going to fold on those 2 score lines toward the back, like so that your tape shows on the back of piece E. I'm going to go ahead and give this a good burnish. All right. So the bottom of piece E, that folded edge, is going to go on the bottom of this flap. And you can see that piece E is the same width as this D4 piece, this little flap. These are the same width, so this will help you line this up toward the top. So if we're going to dry fit it, you want it to be flush to the bottom, as close as you can get it. And then left to right, it'll help you to line it up by using that piece that you've already put on there, that D4, like that. And then you're going to have a little gap between the pieces, about 1/8 of an inch, like so. And I'll hold it up when I am done. And I'll also show you my technique of how I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to take off the liner. I always like to start in the corner. I think that helps me. I'm going to use my right hand to kind of hold this tape up off the project. until I'm ready for it. And I'm gonna start at the bottom, and I'm just gonna kind of guess a little bit here. See, at the top, I'm gonna line it up with this D4 as best I can by eyeballing it. And I'm gonna kind of line up the bottom as best I can. And see, I'm keeping the tape off by holding my hand underneath everything. So, get my head in the way here. Just gonna do my best to line this up top and bottom. Then I'm gonna take my hand out, but I'm gonna work on the bottom piece. I'm gonna kind of lift it like this so this piece doesn't go down prematurely. And I'm gonna try to line this up at the bottom because that's what's gonna show if you're off. The top, no one's really gonna notice, but the bottom piece, if you line it up right on the edge and you go off wonky, that will show. So see, I'm still holding the top piece up with my hand. So once I get the bottom in line, then I just push the top and let it land where it lands. Right? So even if it's not exactly at the top, if the bottom lands clean and it looks clean, you're not going to notice this very well. So now you've got a belly band here. We're going to put stuff in. Isn't that good? This is going to be neat when it's done. Okay. Put the project out of the way. So now let's work on our last few pieces that we've got. Let's go ahead and do the tape all at once. So we're at the bottom of page 6. On pieces F and G, these are going to be pockets. So you're going to put the tape on the top all the way around those 3 sides where you have your score lines. Well, that's just having a field day, isn't it? There we go. So you're just going to put the tape. Man, there's something sticky on there on my block. So you're just going to put tape all the way around those 3 sides, the 3 sides that have score lines. I'm going to do the same thing with piece G. I hope you're enjoying putting this project together. It uses very small supplies to get as much real estate as we are getting to put pictures, to use only 7 pieces of 8.5 by 11. And of course it will be even fewer pieces if you're using 12 by 12. So there's F and G, like this. And then on piece H, you're going to flip it over to the back where the bumps are, and we're going to put tape between the cut edge and this very first score line. So I'm going to flip it over like this, and I'm just going to put the tape here between the cut edge and the first score line. So the second score line, this, you're going to leave alone. That's going to be your gusset for your project, and burnish. Okay, so let's start with piece F. When you're making a pocket, what you want to do is you got to cut out some of the bulk. So at the bottom of page 6, you can kind of see a picture of how we're going to miter these corners. We're basically cutting a triangle out. So I'm going to cut a triangle out right where the 2 score lines meet. I'm not going to cut off that score line, but I'm going to cut right where they meet, just like so. And there's a good picture, like I said, at the bottom of page 6. We're going to do that with F and G. Just don't go any further than where the 2 score lines meet, and you should be good. Now you're going to flip it over. You're going to fold toward the back where you can see the tape on the back, and these are going to make your pocket. So then when you fold these together, you should have not much of a gap, but you shouldn't have a big overlap either. If you have a big overlap, you might want to trim some more off. See, this one's not perfect. This one is close to perfect, but you know, that's just luck, getting close to perfect. You just don't want there to be a whole lot of overlap when you fold them together. See, this one's got a lot of overlap. This one's pretty good. So if I have a lot of overlap, I'm just gonna open it, trim another small piece, just not going over where those 2 score lines meet, and there we go. That's a little better. Right. So there's your F and G. So there's your pockets ready to go. Let's grab our project. We are now going to be, let's see, at the top of page 7. We're going to open all the side and the top flaps. We're going to be where you can see piece E. So your D flap is open. You can see piece E. And now you're going to go with piece F, and you're going to put this little short pocket down at the bottom of piece E. So you're just going to line this up. It should be the same size, right and left. So the width should be the same. And we're just going to put this flush at the bottom, piece E. So I'm going to do this the same way I did the other one. I'm going to hold all this tape off with my right hand side. I'm going to go down first with my left corner until I get it the way I like it. And then I'll push it down, keeping this off my page until I get the bottom where I want it. So even if you're off just a little bit, it's going to be okay. I'm off a tiny bit off to the right. The left-hand side is lined up. No one's ever going to see that, just like this. So don't beat yourself up. You got a little pucker here. We'll deal with that later if you do, because I do. It's puckering out a little bit in the center, but we will deal with that inside the project. All right, so now we also have this pocket G. So put your D flaps down so that you see this big area. This is the back of A. All the flaps are out of your way. You're going to take this piece G and you're going to go down on the top of A. See this other flap? You can see the seam here. This is going to go over that. You've got about 1/8 of an inch on both sides before you hit the first score line, and about 1/8 of an inch on the bottom of that first score line toward the bottom. So you're going to go over this seam that's right here. I know there's somebody out there shaking their head going, what is she talking about? So that is why I make the cutting guide with pictures, because I have taken many classes where I have felt the same way. I'm like, okay, what? So I'm gonna try to line this up where the bottom of this flap, where I kind of, where G lands kind of at the bottom of those flaps, but away from the score line. And let's see if that works. I'm not able to put things on straight this morning, it would seem. That's okay. All right. So this first score line, where flap D3 is, it kind of went over that seam. I'm about 1/8 of an inch here. I got a little bit more on this side, but that's okay. No one's ever going to notice that except for you. So you got a really big pocket here. And we've got one more piece, and we're almost done. Less than 40 minutes, and we've got this thing put together. All right, here's the back of H, where we have this here. We're going to do just a very slight trim here. I'm going to start at the first score line, and I'm going to trim off a tiny, tiny piece. This sliver, just a little bit here, and you can see this. Let's see where we are in the middle of page 7 here. We're just going to take it, and we're going to take the tiniest piece off because we're going to be layering this on top of another piece. So we just want to, what's the word? This is miter it a little bit, or taper, sorry. We're going to taper it just a little bit to try and help where that's not going to overlap. So where you see the back of H, we're going to fold toward the back here, which says back of H on both of those score lines. Use your ruler if you need to. And I'm going to make sure I've got a good burnish here. I'm going to open it back up like this. But I folded on my 2 score lines. Now let's fold this project all the way up. And again, how you fold it is I'm going to start. You're going to have things in your pocket, so you're going to want to keep those from falling out. So you're going to put the top 2 D flaps down first. All right, then you're going to put your D3 flap up. All right, so that keeps all that from falling out. And then you simply do your C pieces on top of each other and your B pieces on top of each other, and that's done. And this is a part of this bottom section, so it's just going to flap like this. And then you fold this over like this, and you've got 1/2 inch gusset here so far. So far, so good. So this is how you fold everything up, and this is the top. Remember, this has got that little bit of edge at the top where we didn't put any flaps. That's going to be your top piece where we're going to attach this to. And once again, what we just did is at the bottom of 7, how to fold everything up. So now we're going to be at the top of page 8. So here's the top of my project. I'm going to turn it this way so I can deal with it better. And then here's where your tape's going to be. So you're simply going to put this underneath here, and you're going to butt it up to the first score line and tape that into place. So if you need to move this around, open it up, however you need to do it to make this easier on yourself, do that. But that's what you're going to be doing. All right, let's take off the liner here. Okay. Let's see, how is the easiest way for me to do this? I think I'm going to do it this way. No. Okay, I'm just going to fold everything up. I'm going to use a big paper clip to kind of hold it in place on the side, because I don't want to put anything on the top because that's where I'm working. And just lightly, I'm just going to make sure it's right to left, that it lines up, and I'm going to make sure I'm almost to that first score line, and then push that down into place. Okay. This and burnish the tape. So that when you fold up the bottom, and now when you fold up the top, this is what it should look like. So now you've got a 1/2-inch gusset on both sides. We got plenty of room now to put everything in. All right, so while we're still working on this project, let's go ahead and put our magnets on. But for the most part, this is done. And once again, I forgot to do my corner rounding, because piece H, you want it to look nice, so we're going to corner round it. So be sure and follow the instructions, the written instructions. I do a much better job when I'm writing than when I'm teaching, as I get to go in here. Let me make sure everything else, yeah, is corner rounded. It is. All right, so you're going to grab your magnets. Let me grab mine. Okay, so you should have 4 little bitty magnets like so. And let's see where we are here. We are on the top of page 9. We're going to put our magnets on, and then we're going to stop for the day. So the way I like to put magnets on, so I'm going to grab 2. Even though they're small, they're mighty. I'm going to kind of put them away from each other here. So where it says the back of H, this is where we're going to be working. You're going to grab your tape, and you're going to put them like so. You're going to use 2 of them. You want to stay away from the very edge because you want to be able to mat, but you don't want it to be too far down in the center. And then just take your piece of tape and simply tape them down into place. Like so. All right. Now then take your second magnets here and place over the top, on top of that tape. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a stamp out of glue so that when we stamp it down here, we'll know exactly where it lines up. What you want to do is you just want to make sure your project, that these are at 90-degree angles as best as you can, right, before you put this down. Right, you just want to make sure it's straight. So grab you some glue, some liquid glue, and put glue all the way around your magnets. And I'll hold this up. And there's some pretty good pictures, like I said, on page 9. So see, it's full of glue. I'm going to turn it to the side and make sure it's straight before I stamp it down. Just like this. So I'll make sure I have enough room. See, I know it's not going to stay in place. I'm just using it like a stamp. Like that. So see, now I've got a really good idea of where these need to go. So it's messy, but I take it off and flip it down on top. Right there. So now they're right in the right space of where I want them to be. And then now I take tape, and this is what's actually going to keep it on there. I tape. Whoa! Did you see that? Tape that down into place. Let me get, there we go, just right. The thing slipped right off. There we go. So now, there we go. They're right in place, and when you look at it, so you've got pretty good angles here. You don't want to put it where they're stretched out too far or where you don't have enough room, but this is what it should look like. So now you've got your wallet put together. And when I come back tomorrow, we'll actually start the videos on decorating. So you can either make it out of parchment or you can make it out of black, and depending on which kit you pick up is what color that you got. Or I would love to see some that you make out of a different color of cardstock. If you decide to make this project, or if you're enjoying this project, please give this video a thumbs up and go on over to our Facebook group, Lisa Wise Designs, and show us some pictures of what you're working on. We would love to get some inspiration. Thank you guys for your continued support, and I'll be back here with you again tomorrow. Bye.